many of you actually seen the TED Talks that are online? You actually watched them? Maybe two people here? Okay. So if you watch them, what happens is somebody from usually a foreign country will come up and talk about their research in a certain area. It could be engineering, it could be mathematics, it could be statistics, things like that. But they're usually very technically based. And they make some very dramatic presentation. And it's a little bit over the top. And I don't have one of those planned. I don't even have any PowerPoints or anything like that for you, because the company doesn't let me bring some of those things. So some of the stuff that I do, I'm not going to be able to tell you about. So you're free to ask those questions, but I might have to tell you, sorry, I can't talk about that. The first thing I thought I would do is spend maybe the first 5 to 10 minutes talking about how I became an engineer, since that's sort of where you guys are now. You're thinking about going to college and stuff like that. Maybe some of you aren't. And then the next part I'll talk about becoming an engineer, what I do on a daily basis. Talk about working with Sarah's parents, and we'll have questions at the end. Is that good? Yeah. Okay, so I grew up in Colorado. I went to Regis Jesuit High School, and their colors were red and white, and they had a big red R in the middle of their field. So when I was looking at the map to figure out how to get here, I felt like I was going to my high school. And when I became a senior, of course, I'm thinking, where am I going to go to school next? So I thought, well, I'm going to do veterinary medicine. Where's the best school for that? Well, there's a good school, Colorado State, it's in Fort Collins. I'm going to go there. And that was my decision right there. I didn't really apply to a whole lot of schools, just a handful. And so it made the most sense. And then I went out there for orientation. That's the day you go up there to talk about, to talk with your other classmates, to get your dorm room assignments, to meet a few of your professors, pick your classes. When it came time to pick classes, I said, oh gosh, I don't want to do medicine. And I'm in the room right now. I'm ready to click. What classes am I going to take? So I had this, it wasn't a panic attack or anything like that, but I had a drastic change in my thinking. What am I going to do? I like zoology, but I'm not crazy about medicine. So my mom says to me, well, you like that show Junkyard Wars on television. And maybe you've seen this show. I don't think it's been on the air. There was a BBC version before there was an American version. I recommend the BBC version if you're going to do it. And basically they pit two teams of people against each other. And they go out to this junkyard and they pull engines and they pull just scrap metal. They pull wheels or whatever they're after, and they build something for this competition. It could be a car, it could be a catapult, whatever the competition is. So I said, yeah, I do enjoy that stuff. How do I get a degree in junkyard wars? Well, I talked to some people and they said, we should do mechanical engineering. And at the time, I really had no idea what an engineer was. And that's part of the reason I'm here today. I hope to help you guys figure out what you want to do if it's science-based and engineering. So, an engineering degree. Yeah, sure. Mechanical. That sounds good. What is that? So my first few years, I took thermodynamics, I took the intro classes, the physics, the chemistry, what else was there? Statics, and of course, you know, there's the calculus and things like that. And that's all the intro, and so I'm getting this very broad look at all the disciplines. And mechanical engineering is the broadest, I would say, of the engineering disciplines. There's chemical engineering, there's electrical, there's computer, there's systems engineering, there's all of those. Mechanical sort of encompasses all of those. You get a little bit of a taste from each one. And then the next 2 years, you end up focusing a little bit more. At least in undergrad, you focus a little bit more. And so then I took the aeronautics, I took internal combustion engines, I took fluid dynamics, regular old dynamics, mechatronics, which is basically robotics, for those of you interested in that kind of thing. And I found all of those things interesting. All of them. And I was pretty good at most of them. I really like aeronautics, or rather, I really like airplanes. That's about as far as I got. And I like fluid dynamics, and that has to do with aeronautics, of course. So I'm thinking, I'm not going to get a job probably in any of these disciplines and the classes I've taken. I need to keep going. So I went to grad school, and that was basically stalling for a year and a half. I went to Georgia Tech in Atlanta, and I enrolled in propulsion and combustion inside the aeronautics discipline, aeronautical engineering. And so I'm in with everyone who wants to deal with the engines, who wants to do with the chemistry of the engine combustion. I did some electric propulsion. I did those kinds of things. And on a whim, I ended up in a class called Aeroacoustics. And I more or less signed up for this course because it sounded interesting, and I really didn't know much more than that, honestly. But I had all my engineering background up to this point, so I figured, I know how to think. I can do this class. So I took it, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the professor, I really enjoyed the subject material, and I was pretty good at it. So I said, I'm gonna do this. I gotta stick with this. I asked the professor to take me on board, and I started grading for the classes that I had taken years and years ago. For what seemed like years ago. And so I was grading papers, and then I started working at Georgia Tech Research Institute, which is associated with the school, of course. And I was working in their anechoic chambers. An anechoic chamber is a room. Most of them are about this size. Some of the NASA facilities are much, much larger. They've got foam wedges glued to the walls everywhere. When you walk in and close the door, you hear your heartbeat. And it's weird. And it makes me sick. I don't like working in those rooms. But it's really interesting that you hear all that. And so what we do at the Georgia Tech Research Institute is put some jets in there, put propellers in there, put rotors in there, put all kinds of things. Everything makes noise when it moves through the air. So we're measuring it with microphones, and you don't get reflections off the wall like you do in here. And then you take the data and you do whatever with it. You write a nice paper, and then you graduate. So I graduated, and my professor knew somebody on this coast who worked for Northrop Grumman. And I interviewed, flew across the country, interviewed, and they didn't ask me any questions. They didn't say, can you derive Green's functions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They didn't say, can you solve this really hard problem. They didn't do any of that, and I was shocked. What they did was tell me, we do neat stuff here. If you want to be involved with it, come fly out, come work for us. I promise you'll enjoy it. And that was pretty much all I had to go on, because they couldn't talk a lot more about it than that. So I said, geez, okay, let's do it. So I went from Colorado to Georgia, out to California. I live a little bit north of here, right on the beach. And I work in El Segundo. I'm sure you've seen all the buildings in El Segundo that Northrop Grumman has. So now I'm at the El Segundo facility, and I work in small teams day to day. I go from classified room to classified room to classified room. I'll go from some days or some weeks I'll sit in one room and I'll plug away in a computer. The next week I will jump from 15 to 20 different rooms, doing little jobs here and there, working with different teams of people, solving different problems, and engineering the work. And the rest of the time we go out to the field and we're measuring things. We're not able to put a whole airplane in a room about this size, most of it.